Today, all over the world, wherever our armies are fighting, P-47s are waging part of the strategic and tactical battle. P-47s, built to outfly the enemy, flown by pilots who can outfight the enemy. Soon, most of you now in training will be sent to join those P-47 pilots already in action. And one of the questions you're wondering about is, where will you be sent? Will it be England? Land where a pilot needs more than a seeing-eye dog on some of those days? Or will it be Italy? Famous for its works of art, but equally noted for its mud. Or will you be sent to the Orient and China, a faraway land where there are many things that you may find strange and not recognize? But we recommend most heartily that you have more than a nodding acquaintance with the silhouettes of the Zeke, Tony, Hamp, or else. England, Italy, China, the South Pacific, those are some of the places to which you might be sent. However, no one can tell you to which theater you will be assigned. But there are certain phases of the job you are being trained for that we can tell you about. Boredom, poor living facilities, insects, heat, rain, snow, malaria, any of these may be yours. And the effect of them, month after month, will bring an increasing tenseness, an increasing susceptibility to get on each other's nerves that must be guarded against. For there's no use regretting arguments with another pilot once his seat at the mess hall is empty. And some of the seats will be empty. When that happens, part of the realization of how grim a business war is will have come to you. But no matter where you're based, no matter what kind of mission you have to fly, you will be expected to continue doing your job nevertheless. And as you were told, it's not a job which consists solely of doing this. A fighter pilot is not trained to be a prima donna or the modern version of the knight in armor mounted upon a horse and ready to rescue the beautiful damsel. He is a minute cog fitted in the vastest war machine ever conceived. A cog so machined that it will perform certain operations. But the best way to tell you about those operations is to tell you about war as waged by P-47 pilots in one day all over the world. These are a few of the pilots, just 7 men scattered throughout the world. Each of them happened to do a different job on that one day. 6 of them did the job right. But one of these 7 made a mistake, a fatal mistake. Very soon you will be doing all of these jobs in combat. Listen as the pilots give a report on their missions. Find the fatal mistake so you don't make it yourself. Listen to the first pilot, Lieutenant Kramer, former salesman, now stationed in Italy.
Early this morning, we were called in to be briefed for a mission. Meantime, my squadron was being bombed up with 1,000-pounders. The other squadron was flying top cover, so it carried no bombs. From what the intelligence officer told us, the mission was hot. A German armored column was moving up to stem an American attack that was supposed to break the Gothic line. We were supposed to break the German armored column. It was about as easy as barging past some of those armor plate secretaries they stuck in front of the buyer's office back in my salesman days. After we took off, we joined formation and headed for the target. In about 20 minutes, we reached the target area and my leader started down. Then I peeled off from my bomb run, clearing my tail for enemy fighters as I started down. On my way out, I cleared my tail again. Then I made a steep climbing turn away from the target and rejoined formation on my leader. The next day, the ground forces sent back a report as to the damage we'd done.
Listen to the second pilot, Lieutenant Sanderson, home state, Minnesota.
I'm stationed in England. On this day I'm talking about, we all knew something big was coming up, so we didn't exactly sleep like babes. But it wasn't until a couple of hours later we got the real dope. Long ramrod to cripple 190 fighter production in Germany. They told us other groups would escort the bombers to the target and over it, and my group was supposed to escort the big friends home. Naturally, on a long haul like that, we carried belly tanks to give us the extra range. We rendezvoused at 1400 hours, exactly as briefed, just as the bombers withdrew from the target area. At that point, a swarm of fighters started up after them. So we positioned ourselves to ward off the attack. A few minutes later, we spotted a fortress starting to fall out of the formation. My element leader and I were ordered to cover the straggler. At the same time, 1109 saw easy meat. He started making persistent attacks on this lone B-17 almost until we reached the coast. At that point, I followed the snapper almost down to the ground before I got him. And it gave me my 5th German plane.
The third pilot, Lieutenant Edward Hauser. He had already finished his freshman year in college when he went in. Was it he who made the fatal error?
Today, our squadron was handed the kind of job we never had done before. And in the South Pacific, you get some queer ones. We were supposed to lay a smokescreen to cover an airborne invasion behind Jap lines. In spite of the 2 tanks under the wings, the plane handled just as good as she always did. When we reached target, we led the C-47s in and laid our smokescreen between them and the Japs. That way, the paratroops were able to jump and assemble on the ground, screened from enemy fire. The operation was successful. But I'd still rather be the guy who lays the smokescreen than the one who does the jumping.
The fourth pilot, Lieutenant John Hoffman, former assistant mortician, now looking for business in the CBI theater.
My mission was destruction of ground installations behind enemy lines by use of airborne rockets. Photo Joes and P-38s had covered the area. With the pictures, intelligence had pinpointed a Jap ammunition dump. If we hit the dump, there'd be no problem about the rest of the place. With the one flight of my squadron that was scheduled for the mission, I took off and hedge-hopped all the way to the target. When we reached the target area, we immediately spotted the ammo dump and started making individual runs. Using my gun sight, the same as when I fire my 50s, I squeezed the tit. Nobody can argue much about how successful the results were.
The fifth pilot is Lieutenant Leonard Stiles, former Hollywood cameraman, now seeking local color over European skies.
The only thing I don't like about a fighter sweep is you have to get up too early. But don't get me wrong, there are rougher ways to fight a war than in the Air Force. We took off and assembled in combat formation as a squadron. After crossing the lines, we stooged around enemy aerodromes for a while. As we were circling over one of them, Blue Flight Leader called,
8+ twin-engine fighters at 3 o'clock below. Let's go get them.
Meantime, down on the ground, they climbed rapidly to gain altitude for an attack. 25+ of them bounced us, just as we finished making the first attack on the twin-engine fighters, and we were positioning ourselves for another. When we began running low on ammunition, we returned to base. When my flight leader landed, his crew chief practically had the new swastikas painted on the ship before the prop stopped.
Did Lieutenant Edward Taylor, former professional football player, make the fatal mistake that day?
This is the way the island looked late that afternoon. The invasion was to take place the next day. At the briefing, 2 other pilots and myself were ordered to knock out a pillbox near the shore and the invasion point using firebombs. We watched our crew chiefs fill the belly tanks with the napalm gasoline mixture and install the detonators. And we talked about the last football game we'd seen before shipping. Just about the time we were taxiing and taking off, we were told that the invasion convoy was about 50 miles away from where they were going to establish the beachhead and where we had a job to do. We sighted the pillbox. We hit the Jap target right on the nose.
The 7th pilot, Lieutenant Stern, ex-lawyer, now pleading a case with the Germans.
My armorer made sure I'd have plenty of .50 caliber for this strafing job we were being sent on. This mission was part of what we'd been busy at all that week, isolating the battlefield. Today, we were supposed to hit Jerry aerodromes in order to keep enemy fighters from shooting up our ground troops. For dessert, we could hit any loose transportation we saw moving up to the enemy lines. Of course, this is a little different from practicing law, but I can't say any of us had a dull day. We hit the aerodromes first. Then we rejoined formation. But on the way home, we saw our dessert.
Now you've seen one day of war as fought by 7 men all over the world. One of those 7 made a fatal error. Lieutenant Kramer, who flew the bombing mission in Italy. Lieutenant Sanderson, escort mission to Germany. Hauser, an important chemical spray job in the South Pacific. Lieutenant Hoffman of the CBI. After all, it was his first mission with rockets. Or Lieutenant Stiles, fighter sweep, France. Then there was the ex-football player. Lieutenant Taylor might have gotten his signals mixed on that pre-invasion pillbox job. And finally, Lieutenant Stern, strafing expert. Who was it? Remember this? Remember this?
At that point, I followed the snapper almost down to the ground before I got him. And it gave me my 5th German plane.
Remember him? Lieutenant Sanderson, who on an escort mission shot down his 5th German plane and became an ace. Here's what happened while he left his cripple to become an ace. Enemy fighters were waiting in the sun. They bounced the single 47 and then got the fortress. Sanderson was more interested in becoming an ace than in doing a job as part of a team. 11 unnecessary American deaths. Two airplanes are a lot to be responsible for. Do your job as it should be done, as part of a team, and that responsibility will never be yours. For to help you do it, you've been given a weapon that has already proven itself. A weapon that is equal to or better than anything in enemy skies today.